Long range shooting with archery equipment is a hot topic, and I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of morals or ethics with long range hunting, but what I do want to do is try to break a few things down from your equipment selection and understanding your setup to help you be able to shoot longer range for practice and proficiency and just to be a better archer. When it comes to long range shooting, the number one factor that's going to allow you to shoot further distance and become more proficient is understanding your setup. So first things first, the one thing I want to talk about and touch on is the distance that really translates into how far you can shoot with a movable sight is at full draw, your arrow to peep, your line of sight through your peep measurement. And what that's going to dictate is, if you're like me, where I anchor kind of high on my jawbone and I come onto the string a little bit, I've got a shorter eyesight to arrow measurement. Someone who anchors a little bit lower on their jaw or their chin, down below, and is a little bit more vertical, or maybe their face is just a little bit taller, that's going to translate into more distance that you can dial your sight and longer range you can practice on. The second thing I want to talk about is speed. You know, arrow speed is talked about from when you buy a new bow, advertising, it's all over the archery world, and some people want to say it's not as important. Let me tell you where it is important. I like to shoot my hunting arrows in a 285 to 295 feet per second range. Why I've chosen that is because in that area with a well-tuned bow, I can usually still get a fixed blade broadhead to tune well and shoot out to 60 to 70 yards in that category, in that speed range. Once I start pushing that 300 feet per second plus range, things get a little squirrely, arrows start to plane a little bit more, and everything is just more, it's just a little more finicky. So I like to stay in that, again, 285 to 290 feet per second range, preferably. This setup that I'm playing with right now, my bow's not all the way turned up poundage wise, and I'm shooting a little heavier arrow, so it's right in that 280 feet per second mark. So check out this picture that shows you I have a 280 feet per second sight tape lined up right next to a 300 roughly feet per second sight tape. Built off the same bow, just different arrows that I plugged into the program. Now you can see, as you can see, right now with this specific setup, my fast Eddie Spot Hog, with the center pin perfectly centered in the housing, I'm about 87 yards what this bow is performing based in addition to the way my anchor, my peep height measurement is. So I'm right about 87 yards maximum where I can put that pin on and not hit the bottom of my housing. It's not a lot, not very far. Once you take into account that if I was to be in that 300 feet per second range, 300 feet per second on the second sight tape, I could potentially be at 95 or 97 yards just by increasing the speed. So is speed important? Yes, it is important. Just understanding where your sweet spot is and what's best for you is the key. So sometimes adding a few extra pounds to the draw weight of your bow if you can, picking an arrow that's just a little bit lighter but still within reason. All these characteristics come into play, and there is no right or wrong. It's just understanding your setup and what you want to play for. So we've talked briefly about, you know, having a single pin right in the center of that housing. So another way to get a little bit more yardage out of your sight is obviously by having a multiple pin sight housing. This one specifically has a secondary reference pin that's not adjustable, but it's just that it's a secondary reference. I've hunted with a 4 or 5 pin driver style sight for years now, and what it does is it gives you that much more distance because that pin is lower in your housing, adding potentially 15 to 25 yards onto the maximum distance you can shoot. The one thing that I will say to tie into that is, as you start putting that housing down or adjusting it lower to get your maximum distance, if that bottom pin sits too close to the bottom of your housing, when you're at full draw and anchoring, some other factors come into play. Where you have your peep set, it's going to be difficult to center your housing. The other thing is at that distance, when you're looking through that, you're not going to be looking through your sight window. Your picture that you're looking through is not going to be as comfortable. It's not going to be the same as when you're shooting at some of those pins in the middle of your sight. So this is something that I think is a great fix, because having that pin, that second reference pin, is right about the third, the top of the bottom third. And in my opinion, for my comfort level, that's about the lowest I like to see that pin for ultimate long range accuracy. Obviously, when I can center everything and put the middle pin on there, that's where I'm most accurate, but I can still shoot fairly well when it doesn't encroach too low into the bottom third of that sight housing. So consider a multiple pin sight. Just understand that once you start adjusting those pins and having that bottom pin really low on your sight window, it's going to take some getting used to and definitely some practice. But at the end of the day, that's what this video is all about, is assisting you in how you can practice long range. So just try that out and see if it works for you. The last thing I want to talk about is understanding the safety side of shooting with a driver style sight. I've got this arrow fletched here with the fletching to help me indicate when I have my launcher at its up position, how far I can actually drive my sight down. Just because you can print a sight tape on a program that'll take you out to 120 or 150 yards doesn't mean you're going to be able to shoot it. You need to understand that when you're at rest, especially with the drop away style rest, if you have your housing pegged down, it may be floating down here somewhere. But when you take that launcher up and it puts that shaft closer to the position of where the bottom of the housing is, you need to be careful. If your bow is not properly tuned, this is also another area where you could maybe see some sight damage, because as that arrow is coming forward and it starts porpoising through the bow, through the power stroke of your shot, if you have too weak of a spined arrow, or if you have you're getting contact where it's kicking that back of the shaft up off the launcher, if you're cutting it close to where you don't have any wiggle room, where your fletchings are coming underneath that sight housing, you could be looking for trouble. So just be careful. This is something at the end of the day, we don't want to see anybody getting hurt. We don't want to see the viral YouTube videos when somebody shoots through their finger or shoots through a sight window. So just be safe when you're out shooting. Understand that your setup, as you start micro-analyzing everything on your setup, you know, whether it's adding a few extra pounds of draw weight, shaving a few grains of arrow weight off, maybe adjusting your anchor point slightly where your peep will creep up just a smidge and it's still within your comfort zone. All those things will start to translate into potentially 3 to 5 yards here or there with different aspects of your setup, where you may be able to shoot. You may, like myself, I'm about 115 yards. If I tweaked a few things on my setup, I can probably get to 122 to 125. So, but understanding where I'm most comfortable and I'm most accurate, that's about where I'm at, is about 115 yards on a multiple pin sight for practice purposes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a like if you did. We'll be bringing you more real life, how certain things translate into your setup, and tips and other tricks that you can play with on your setup to help you be more efficient. Once again, check out the Alpha Bowhunting Challenge, alphabowhunting.com, if you want to come play a game with us, and some of the other videos we have out. So it's like I leave you with every other video. As bow hunters, I encourage you to dream big, shoot straight, and I'll check you next time.